Céad míle fáilte go baile lia. Welcome to Dublin. Welcome to one of Europe's most vibrant, cosmopolitan and exciting cities, where you'll find the history, tradition and culture of a Celtic nation, side by side with the buzz of a modern, thriving capital. While you're here, you can enjoy the warmth of Irish hospitality and sample the delights of Irish and international cuisine. You could stay in an ancient medieval castle or in one of the many modern hotels the city is now renowned for. Why not visit the many arts and cultural exhibitions at Dublin's galleries and museums? And while you're there, learn how many of our artists, authors and explorers have contributed to Ireland's rich cultural heritage. The city is ideal for exploring, nestling either side of the majestic River Liffey, which itself has many secrets and stories to tell. Visit one of the many castles both in the metropolis and the suburbs. Take a ride on an open-topped tour bus and experience the city's architecture from the top deck. And when you need to be refreshed, drop into a real Irish pub and enjoy a pint with the locals and a hearty lunch, which you might need a city walking tour to work off. Take a relaxing carriage ride around the city streets or a cruise down the Liffey to enjoy the growing cityscape and changing skyline. We hope you enjoy this look at Dublin as much as you enjoy your visit, and that this DVD will help you plan your time here and have you coming back soon. Dublin packs as much into what it has to offer the visitor as many other capital cities twice its size. Whether your interest is cultural, traditional, or that you just want a good look around, there's plenty of choice. Your first stop might be at any of the 5 tourist offices in the city to plan your visit. Then the city is all yours. Maybe a visit to one of the many galleries would be your first choice, or to one of the many fascinating museums. Whichever you choose, it won't cost you a cent to get in, and you can stay as long as you like to enjoy the thousands of exhibits. Or consider a cruise on the River Liffey. Leaving regularly from the quayside at Bachelor's Walk, it will give you a fish's eye view of the changing landscape of both the old and new Dublin. Then, when you get back on dry land, why not explore Temple Bar, just a short walk over the Halfpenny Bridge. With shops and cafes, pubs and galleries, it's well worth a couple of hours of your time to explore. Next, how about a visit to the famous Guinness Brewery in James's Street? A famous landmark in Dublin's Liberties, the brewery dates back to 1759, when Arthur Guinness signed a 9,000-year lease on the famous premises. Enjoy a pint of the black stuff in the Gravity Bar and stock up on souvenirs in the Guinness shop. You can get there by Lewis, on foot or by car. Then it's just a small hop over the Liffey to Bow Street and the home of Jameson, one of Ireland's many famous whiskies. You can sample the best of them at the Jameson Whisky Corner. And if you can find your way back to your hotel, you can plan your evening at one of Dublin's many excellent theatres after you enjoy dinner at any of the wide selection of restaurants serving all kinds of Irish and international cuisine. If a short trip to the suburbs is your fancy, why not visit Rathfarnham Castle on Dublin's south side, or Malahide Castle on the other side of town. Rathfarnham Castle dates from the 17th century. It has been extensively restored, and there's a coffee shop where you can relax after your tour. Malahide Castle is a fine example of a fortress and family home, and was a private home for over 800 years. It houses a fine collection of Irish portrait paintings, mainly from the National Art Gallery. Both are worth a visit and are easy to get to. There is so much to see, whether you go on foot or take one of the open-topped tour buses or even the Lewis or Dart. Whichever way you experience Dublin, enjoy your stay and come back again. Symbol of life and constant renewal, James Joyce's Anna Livia Plurabelle, commonly known as the River Liffey, enters Dublin at the aptly named Anna Livia Bridge in Chapel Izard, location for Joyce's famous novel Finnegan's Wake. Having meandered for over 120 kilometres, now guided by ancient quay walls, the Liffey finally straightens out at Euston Station and passes under no less than 16 bridges on its way to the sea. The oldest standing bridge is Mellows Bridge, or more commonly Queen's Bridge. Built in 1764, it was named after the legendary Queen Maeve, warrior queen of Connacht. By coincidence, it sits next to Dublin's newest road bridge, the Calatrava-designed James Joyce Bridge, facing onto which is the very house in which Joyce set his famous short story, The Dead. O'Connell Bridge in the city centre is the only road bridge in Europe that is as wide as it is long. However, it is Dublin's smallest bridge that is its most famous, and the most beloved of Dubliners. Generally accepted as the symbol of Dublin, the Halfpenny Bridge was opened in 1816 as a pedestrian toll bridge, and you don't need two guesses as to how much it cost to cross. For millennia, the River Liffey has divided North-Sider from South-Sider, and in times past the bridges were hotspots for mob violence. Today, they are meeting points connected by boardwalks, where one can enjoy a cup of coffee perched above the river in a happy no-man's land. In the short few miles in which it flows through the city centre, the Liffey is awash in history and legend. The recorded history of Dublin is said to date from 841, when Vikings established a fortified stockade on high ground overlooking the river at Wood Quay. Close by is the old Cathedral of the Holy Trinity, better known as Christ Church, founded in the 11th century by King Sitrick Silkbeard. The 12th century cryptic contains is said to be the oldest standing building in Dublin. Just a few short steps from the banks of the Liffey is Dublin's other cathedral, St Patrick's, dean of which was none other than the renowned author of Gulliver's Travels, Jonathan Swift. Cross to the north side at this point on the river and you will find the forecourts on Inns Quay. Designed by James Gandon, Dublin's foremost architect, it was completed in 1802. During the Irish Civil War in 1921, it was badly damaged by fire. However, it was later completely restored and is now the seat of Ireland's High Court. As well as being steeped in history, the banks of the Liffey also bustle with commercial and recreational activity. In previous centuries, the area now known as Temple Bar, which runs between Grattan Bridge and the Halfpenny Bridge, was renowned for its nighttime activities, including illegal gambling and shady ladies. Doomed to become a bus park, it fell into dereliction until imaginative planning on the part of the City Council saw it rejuvenated as the cultural heart of the city. Nowadays, Temple Bar is once again Dublin's most popular night spot. Only today, it is home to restaurants, theatres, cinemas, pubs and the small galleries that line the narrow cobbled streets. Just beyond the magnificent Custom House, also designed by James Gandon, lies Dublin's Docklands area. Once bleak and run down, this part of the Liffey is undergoing massive redevelopment and a rapidly changing cityscape has begun to emerge, which even most Dubliners would find hard to navigate. Where once huge cargo ships and dockside cranes dominated the skyline, you are now as likely to see super yachts and graceful tall ships, including the famine replica ship, the Jeanie Johnston. All that's left to complete your experiences of Dublin's River Liffey is to take the plunge. Dublin's annual Liffey Swim takes place every September between Watling Street Bridge and Custom House Quay. So, as Dubliners say, get your togs on and put a toe in Anna Livia Pluribel. Probably the only thing that Dubliners prefer to strolling the streets of their capital city is sitting themselves down on a carpet of green in one of its many beautiful and historical parks. In fact, not only does Dublin contain numerous green areas, it's also fortunate enough to have what is reputed to be the largest enclosed park in any city in the world, the Phoenix Park. Situated just a few kilometres to the west of the city, the Phoenix Park is an oasis for city dwellers. Originally established by the Duke of Ormond in the 17th century to provide hunting for the king and his retinue, the Phoenix Park remained the exclusive reserve of the British court in Ireland until it was opened to the public by Lord Chesterfield in 1745. The park's 11 kilometres of beautiful stone walls enclose over 1,700 acres of everything from wilderness to magnificent flower gardens. A herd of over 400 deer roam through the woods of oak, ash and conifer, and the principal roads are lined with magnificent beech and chestnut trees. Indeed, wander through the park on a summer's evening and you'll find it impossible to believe you're in the heart of a capital city. You can quite easily lose sight of all other human life, or you can simply sit and enjoy a game of cricket, or perhaps watch the agile ponies and fearless riders on the polo grounds. On Sundays you can relax and listen to the music of the bands in the hollow beside the People's Gardens, or enjoy a cup of tea at the visitor centre, and while there visit the restored medieval castle. Animals of a wilder disposition can be found in Dublin Zoo, founded in 1830 with animals supplied by London Zoo. The African plains provides glimpses of what it is like for animals living in the wild. Dublin Zoo has everything from a city farm to a family of gorillas and is located at the city end of the park, adjacent to Áras an Uachtaráin, residence of the President of Ireland. Originally the Park Rangers Lodge, the Áras dates from 1751, and it later became the residence of the Viceroys, Lords Lieutenant and Governors General from 1782 to 1932. Many of Dublin's parks are the result of Georgian planning in the 18th century, whereby magnificent houses were often laid out surrounding a square of green. One such park, located right at the heart of the city, is Merrion Square. Merrion Square can be equally rewarding without as within. Throughout the summer, artists exhibit their work on its railings, and on the Clare Street corner, a resplendent Oscar Wilde gazes out upon passers-by. When it came to creating parks, the Victorians were even more enthusiastic than their predecessors, the Georgians, and St Stephen's Green, with its main entrance at the top of Grafton Street, is possibly the finest example of a Victorian park to be found anywhere in the British Isles. It soothes the weary urbanite with tree-lined walks, overflowing flower beds bursting with colour, an ornamental lake filled with ducks and migratory birds, and not least, secluded benches in green bowers, where many a Dublin marriage was proposed. When taking in the parks of Dublin, a visit to the tropics is an absolute must. Yes, it's true, Dublin has a tropical zone. And even though it's not very big, it is beautiful. With many exotic plants from around the world on display in its magnificent glasshouses, the National Botanic Gardens in Glasnevin is home to approximately 20,000 species and cultivars. Located in the valley of the River Tolka, which flows through its sweeping lawns, the gardens aren't just for those with green fingers, but for anyone who appreciates beauty. There are so many parks in Dublin, few if any Dubliners could name them all. Some, as we have seen, are large and grand, but there are many more, sometimes hidden away, that are well worth seeking out. Ivy Gardens are among the finest and least known of Dublin's parks and were designed by Ninian Niven in 1863. They include a rustic grotto, cascade, fountains, maze, rosarium, wilderness and woodlands. So whether it's for play, relaxation or just to sit and pass the time of day with a Dubliner, a visit to one of Dublin's many parks will be a rewarding experience. Perhaps it's because we've a long history of creating collectible items, or maybe because Dubliners never throw anything away. But the result is, the city is packed with fascinating museums. The National Museum of Archaeology and History on Kildare Street houses over 2 million artefacts, ranging in date between 7000 BC and the late medieval period. Here one can see Ireland's world-famous collection of Bronze Age gold ornaments and breathtaking early Christian treasures, such as the Arda chalice, the Derry na Flan hoard and the Tara brooch. There are superb Viking and medieval galleries and a rich collection of Egyptian material, as well as the extraordinary bog bodies recently discovered in counties Meath and Offaly, preserved in the peat bogland as they were buried in the distant past. One of Dublin's more recently created museums is the National Museum of Decorative Arts and History, located at the ex-military establishment of Collins Barracks, which is named after Michael Collins, the first Commander-in-Chief of the Irish Free State. The museum houses superb exhibitions on costume and clothing, coins, furniture, Irish silver, ceramics and, appropriately enough, weaponry. And an historical exhibition that brings to life the political background and events that led to the formation of the Irish state. Whether stuffed, pickled or frozen in stone, there are creatures on display in the Natural History Museum in Merrion Street from every part of the world. From the largest mammal on the planet, the great blue whale, to the tiniest of insects, you'll be amazed at the range of animals on view, many of which are long extinct. Acclaimed for its beautifully preserved Victorian cabinet style, the museum was open even before Charles Darwin published his famous work, The Origin of Species. In fact, probably the only thing you won't find in this captivating museum is a sign saying "Don't feed the animals." In 1968, when Sir Alfred Chester Beatty passed away, he would have had a better idea than most of where he was going. That's because during his lifetime, he assembled one of the world's greatest collections of religious manuscripts. Located in the grounds of Dublin Castle, the Chester Beatty Library now holds that extraordinary compilation of sacred texts, illuminated manuscripts and miniature paintings from the great religions, Christianity, Islam and Buddhism. It also includes smaller displays on Confucianism, Taoism, Sikhism and Jainism. The library is also an impressive art museum, housing an outstanding assemblage of magnificent Chinese, Japanese, Indian and other Oriental art. Given the renowned Irish literary tradition, it comes as no surprise that the National Library of Ireland houses an extensive collection of rare and highly valuable material. The library provides a fascinating insight into Irish history, as well as a valuable research tool for historians and genealogists. Although it isn't possible to borrow books from this library, you can use the reading rooms and get photocopies, photographs, slides or microfilm of most items in the collections. Dublin is of course famous for its writers, and at the Dublin Writers' Museum there are displays relating to Irish literature in all its forms, from around the 10th century to the present day. The exhibits include paintings, manuscripts, letters, rare editions and mementos of many of Ireland's famous authors. Without doubt, Dublin's best-known author has to be James Joyce, and as you might expect, there are a number of museums dedicated to his life and work. There's the James Joyce Centre in North Great George's Street, the James Joyce Museum in Sandycove, where he wrote the first chapter of Ulysses, And there's also 15 Usher's Island, the setting for Joyce's famous short story, The Dead. Wherever your curiosity lies, there are enough museums in Dublin to satisfy any interest. And as any Dubliner will tell you, some of our best museum pieces are still walking the streets of the city. In 1990, an event occurred that had Dubliners examining the signatures on every painting that hung on their walls or lay buried in dusty attics. A Caravaggio masterpiece that had been missing for over 200 years was discovered in a Jesuit dining room in the centre of Dublin. Having been generously granted to the state on permanent loan, Caravaggio's The Taking of Christ was carefully restored to its original splendour and now adorns the walls of the National Gallery of Ireland. First opened to the public in 1864, the National Gallery of Ireland is home to both the National Collection of Irish Art and the Collection of European Master Paintings. The National Portrait Gallery and the Yeats Museum also form part of the works of art on display. The Millennium Wing was added in 2002 and, along with the main building on Merrion Square, has 54 galleries housing over 11,000 works of art. Distinguished old masters, including Rembrandt, Vermeer, Gainsborough, Velázquez and Monet, rub shoulders with the Irish school, which includes Osborne, O'Connor, Orpin and, of course, Jack B. Yeats. As with all state galleries and museums, entry is free and you will not be charged a cent to see the many priceless masterpieces. Take a short trip to Parnell Square and you can also make a journey in time to the period of modern and contemporary art on display in the Hugh Lane Gallery, which is in the care of Dublin City Council. The original collection, which was donated by Sir Hugh Lane, now exceeds 2,000 works of art, ranging from Impressionist masterpieces by Renoir, Manet and Degas to some of the latest artistic achievements by leading national and international contemporary artists. The gallery also houses the reconstructed studio of the celebrated artist Francis Bacon. To anyone familiar with the work of Bacon, it gives a wonderful insight into the cluttered mayhem from which his creations emerged. At the Royal Hospital in Kilmainham, you won't see many patients, regal or otherwise. That's because this hospital, originally built as a home for invalided soldiers in the 17th century, and whose grounds include a formal garden, meadow and medieval burial grounds, is now the location for the Irish Museum of Modern Art. Established as such in 1991, it's the country's leading national institution for the collection and exhibition of contemporary art, where you can find many beautiful, if sometimes perplexing, works by 20th century Irish and other artists. The museum presents a wide variety of art in a dynamic programme of exhibitions, and there's also a permanent exhibition on the heritage of the Royal Hospital itself. And finally, we mustn't forget Dublin's most popular art gallery, the railings around Merrion Square and St Stephen's Green in summertime, where today's great and maybe not so great artists exhibit their work. Take a stroll around these living galleries and you're guaranteed to enjoy a wonderful, colourful experience. And who knows, you might even discover the next great master. Dublin is famous as a Georgian city, which means much of its rich architectural heritage dates from the time of King George. This was a period of rapid growth in Dublin. Bridges were built over the River Liffey, and magnificent townhouses and squares, such as St Stephen's Green, Mountjoy Square and Merrion Square were created. The design of Georgian buildings was based on classical proportions from ancient Greece. And although some buildings were constructed entirely of stone, the predominant building material was brick. Inside, Georgian townhouses of beautiful stucco plasterwork, imposing marble fireplaces, and the most elegant staircases, some of which can seem as if they are simply floating in the air. Apart from the townhouses that sprang up around the city, the Georgians built many splendid public buildings. For example, the hugely impressive Bank of Ireland building on College Green, which was once home to the Irish Houses of Parliament. Leinster House, which is the current home of the Irish Parliament, was built in 1745 for the Duke of Leinster. Built in 1710, the Mansion House was one of the first of Dublin's Georgian buildings to be completed, and is the official residence of the Lord Mayor. It has changed little over the years, and is a splendid example from the period. City Hall, originally the Royal Exchange, is not only a fine building in its own right, but is also home to the 13th century city seal and many other historic items of civic regalia. Included among them is the Great City Sword, a personal gift to Dublin City Council from King Henry IV that is used on ceremonial occasions such as conferring the freedom of the city. If there's one Georgian building that really stands out, it's the James Gandon designed Custom House. Built in 1791, it stands imposingly on the banks of the Liffey, awaiting the tall ships that once tied up alongside to declare their cargo. The building was a focal point in the struggles for Irish independence and was seriously damaged by fire in 1921 during the War of Independence. Afterwards, however, it was superbly restored and is well worth a visit. Another building that played a leading role in the struggle for independence is the General Post Office, or GPO, one of the world's oldest and most distinguished postal headquarters. This was the centre stage for the Easter Rising in 1916, when Padraig Pearse read the Proclamation of the Irish Republic from the front steps. Even today you can still see bullet holes in the beautiful classical facade. Founded by Elizabeth I in 1592, Trinity College is the oldest university in Ireland and as much a tourist attraction as it is a place of learning. Here you can wander through the same halls and corridors as once did Jonathan Swift and Oscar Wilde. And while you're there, don't miss the opportunity to see the resplendent Book of Kells. Although it might seem like it, the Georgians didn't construct every building in Dublin. In fact, they were late arrivals that swept away much of medieval Dublin in their rush to develop the city. Fortunately, a significant portion of the majestic Dublin Castle and the old city walls that surrounded it still survive today. Built between 1208 and 1220, it contains some of the oldest surviving architecture in the city. Another of Gandon's masterpieces is the Forecourts. Destroyed in the Civil War in 1922, it has since been completely restored. And like all of Gandon's buildings, the Forecourts was completed with excellent sculptures by Edward Smith. Dublin has a wealth of fine architectural examples, and many new buildings have begun to change the skyline in recent times. A bus tour of the city will give you a wonderful view of the old and the new, and a chance to see how the city has changed in the past 300 years or so. They say a horse and carriage can sometimes travel faster than a car in Dublin city centre. But that's not necessarily a bad thing when you can hire a splendid horse and carriage to take you on a sightseeing tour of most of Dublin's major attractions. You can also hop onto one of a number of tour buses for which you don't have to purchase a ticket in advance. Simply hop on, pay your fare, and hop off again whenever and wherever you like. Take away the suburbs, and Dublin is really not much bigger than a large town. So, if you are able and you enjoy walking, it's easily the best way to see the city. There are many pedestrianised streets, and if you plan your route well, you can take in a surprisingly large number of attractions without having to travel very far. For example, to get from O'Connell Street to St. Stephen's Green takes no more than a 15-minute walk. Public transport in Dublin has traditionally been severely criticised by Dubliners. As the saying goes, you wait ages for a bus and then 3 come along all at once. However, in recent times, public transport has improved considerably. There are a number of cross-city buses that are very useful when travelling within the city centre. These are operated by Dublin Bus. You can pay the fare when actually boarding a bus. but note you should have the exact fare as no change is given. Alternatively, you can buy a daily, weekly or monthly ticket and enjoy unlimited travel. Buses servicing each stop and their timetables are indicated on each bus stop sign. The last buses depart at 11:30 p.m, although there are special Nightlink buses that run after this hour. A recent addition to Dublin's public transport system is the light rail transit system known as the Luas. The Luas trams travel back and forth across the city quite frequently, and although they are not as versatile as buses in terms of where they go, they are nonetheless very useful. Trams run from approximately 5:30 a.m. until midnight. Tickets are available from vending machines on the platforms, and you must buy your ticket before boarding the tram. Dublin's other suburban light rail system is known as the Dart, and it runs along the coast between Howth on the north side and Greystones in County Wicklow, cutting into the city at several stations. It can be a very enjoyable journey, and you will be able to appreciate some of the picturesque coastal scenery all around Dublin Bay. Up until recently, you had a better chance of winning the lotto than you had of hailing a taxi at peak time. However, there are now considerably more taxis on the streets. You can either go directly to one of the many taxi ranks or hail a passing driver. As Dublin is quite a flat city, cycling has always been a popular way of getting around, and there are more and more cycle lanes being created around the city, making cycling in Dublin easier than ever. If you haven't brought your own bike, you can always rent one from a number of rental outlets and bicycle shops. Whatever way you choose to get around Dublin, remember to take your time and make sure you take it all in. While some among us would be perfectly happy never to set foot inside a shop, there are those for whom a visit to any city would not be complete without a visit to all the best stores. In Dublin City, there are two main shopping districts, located conveniently close to each other and on either side of the River Liffey. On the south side is Grafton Street with its upmarket stores and small designer shops. Here you will have no trouble whatsoever finding all the most sought-after designer labels. There's no shortage of cafes and cosy pubs should any of your companions be less enthusiastic about shopping than you are. Just deposit them on a bar stool with their favourite newspaper and enjoy your shopping undisturbed. The largest store by far is the upmarket Brown Thomas, where you can find everything from a frying pan to a dinner suit. At the top of Grafton Street, in what looks like the biggest conservatory in the world, you'll find the St. Stephen's Green shopping centre, perfect for a rainy day. Also on Grafton Street is a fine Marks & Spencer's store, providing a wide range of clothing for men and women. And not far away is Bewley's famous cafe, from where the aroma of freshly ground coffee whets many an appetite. North of the river, just off O'Connell Street, lies Henry Street, undoubtedly Dublin's busiest shopping district. Henry Street boasts several large department stores, the landmark Arnott's, Debenhams, Dunnes Stores and Penneys. Arnott's is a classic department store which can trace its roots back to 1843, making it Dublin's oldest store. Further along Henry Street, you'll come across the Jervis and Ilac centres, both extensive shopping malls with plenty of choice. Just off Henry Street Moore Street is home to Dublin's most famous street market. For generations, Dubliners have bought their fruit and vegetables from the dealers on Moore Street with their colourful stalls. Today, Moore Street is more colourful than ever, with a range of new and exotic shops selling produce from every corner of the world. O'Connell Street itself is also an important shopping precinct. Cleary's department store has occupied the same location since 1853 and has witnessed some of the most significant historical events in the city, while providing Dubliners and visitors with a wide choice of goods. Sometimes shopping is best when it's unplanned, and for those who prefer to wander the streets in search of the unexpected, well, you won't be disappointed in Dublin. Wander off the main thoroughfares and you will find many delightful old shops that have changed little over the years. Step into George's Street Arcade, not far from Grafton Street, and it's like stepping into an Aladdin's cave. There are stalls and shops offering everything from second-hand clothes to bric-a-brac, antiques, fortune-telling and even body piercing. As you might expect in a city as old as Dublin, antique shops are abundant. And although it can be difficult to tell the junk from the genuine article, for those who know what to look for, there are often wonderful bargains to be found. Take a short stroll to the Liberties area just up from Christ Church, and you'll find some wonderful old curiosity shops in which to ferret out a bargain or merely indulge in nostalgia. And don't forget to stock up on some souvenirs at one of the many Carroll's Irish gift shops around the city, where you'll find everything from a shillelagh to a collection of traditional Irish music. Finally, how could anyone come to Dublin, the literary capital of the world, and not buy a book? Dublin has many fine bookshops, including Hodges Figgis and Waterstones on Dawson Street, Hannah's on Nassau Street, and Eason's on O'Connell Street, with other branches around the city. But the place that every book lover enjoys most is the second-hand bookshop, where you can browse to your heart's content and perhaps discover a wonderfully preserved classic. So whether you want to shop till you drop, or wait patiently on a bar stool until the shoppers return, you're sure to enjoy a great day's shopping in Dublin.